Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today, I am so excited to be chatting with Armen Torigian, who serves as the principal of Bullard High School in Fresno, California. Hi, Armen.
Hi, thanks for having me on here today.
Of course, I was so grateful to hear you share your experiences at a conference a couple months ago in Anaheim, California. You spoke about screens at school, specifically your effort to ban smartphones, bell to bell, and probably all smart devices at the high school. This is something that even like middle schools and elementary schools struggle with. And your goal was to separate teenagers from their smartphones, which I am assuming was difficult. And we're going to get into all that.
Yeah.
But let's back up to what was your why? What problems were you trying to solve by removing the phones from these teenagers?
I was not only a student here at Bullard, I was a teacher, became a vice principal, and now I'm the principal. And I went to our feeder middle school, was the principal there for 3 years, and then came back here as the principal. And when I got back, obviously, I left here prior to COVID, came back after COVID. And when I started walking classrooms, I had noticed a huge issue, and that was kids with their phones out. Teachers were up there trying to teach, and no one was paying attention. They were glued to their phones. They were watching YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, everything and anything that they could watch. You know, TikTok was just starting to come around. And so they were always just glued to their phones. So teachers, and you heard this, could you please put your phone away? Could you please put your phone away? Like 15, 20 times.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the same kid, multiple kids, and there's like no learning going on whatsoever. You know, after reading Dr. Haidt's book and knowing that it wasn't just COVID that did this, started prior to COVID, obviously. And but now it had become more of it's like, hey, this is what we do every day. Like, you know, we don't even have to log on at COVID anymore. We just sit here and we'll just watch whatever. So I got back and started seeing all these kids on phones. I'm like, something needs to be done. I said, there's no learning going on. I understand we just got through COVID. Social emotionally, kids are kind of a wreck. They needed that social interaction. And all they've done for the last year and a half at this point has been glued to their phones because they didn't have friends to going out and do things with. So we had to find something. And I know that when I was at the feeder middle school, this Yonder pouch thing had come along, and I'd gotten an email, one of those junk emails that just comes through, and I'd seen that, and I was like starting to inquire about it because we really didn't have a problem at the junior high because we already had a rule there, like no cell phones. You could bring it to school, but if it's seen by a teacher and you take it out of your backpack, it's being taken away.
And why wasn't that same approach successful at the high school level?
Much bigger, first of all. I had 850 to 900 at the middle school. So here, when I got here, we were at 2,200. It's a huge difference. Like almost 3 times the size, or a little over 2 times the size. But over there, a lot of the feeder elementary schools that were coming into my middle school had that same rule. Right. And then, so there are multiple middle schools that actually feed into my high school. So the other middle schools or those other feeders going into the other middle schools didn't have those same rules as we did. So it was it was a little off. So, kids coming from other schools weren't, used to that rule. And then of course you get transfers that come in from other places. And they didn't have that rule either. So it was one of those things. And parents are like, no, I pay the bill. If I say my kid's going to have their phone out, they're going to have their phone out. I'm like, yeah, that's not how it works. So I'm like, we have rules here, and this is what we're going to do. And when I brought it up, people looked at me like I was nuts. I asked all the other comprehensive high school principals. I'm like, you guys want to join me on this journey? They're like, oh, hell no. No way. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, we don't have that problem. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Right. And then a bunch of the other principals said, yeah, don't listen to that guy. Like, we all have this issue. They just don't want to die on that hill. And they just didn't think anything could be done until the district came out with their own rule about this is what we do. Until this date, they still haven't.
So we'll talk about in a minute the policy that you chose to implement and some pushback that you got initially. Was there any other issues with the phone use? You talked a lot about distraction, no learning going on. I'm assuming that was reflected in test scores too.
Test scores were down, grades were down. Social, emotionally, kids were down.
Yeah. Any other issues that you could identify and point to the phones as the cause?
School culture.
Yeah.
Kids weren't talking to one another. They were just glued, even on campus, just zombies glued to their phones. I would sit there and stand on one of the raised planters. Like, I'm only 5'8", right? So I'm not really tall. So I stand on one of the planters and during passing periods and just watch kids, make sure everything's flowing, right?
Yeah.
How many times I saw kids either run into each other, run into the light post, because they're just glued. They're just glued, right?
Yeah.
And then you can't say a word because they got their headphones on too.
Oh, God.
I'm like, this is ridiculous. And so we had to make some hard stops. But it honestly was literally the academics and then the social emotional. And honestly, every time I try to explain some of this stuff to to our kids and to some parents, I'm like, you gotta look at social media as like it's someone's highlight reel. Right? Like, how many times, like, especially on Facebook, parents don't post bad things about themselves. Parents don't post bad things about their own kids.
Yeah.
It's a highlight reel. Think about it. It's like, it's the perfect point in everyone's life. It's their highlight reel. Look how good we are, all our families together. And it was just like, I'm like, you guys are reading everyone's, well, how come and there's a lot of comparing going on. And you know all this. I mean, it's, and that was part of the problem. Social emotionally, kids were down and they're trying to compare themselves to people that they don't even know. And it was just, it was sad. It was really hard. Like, it was hard to watch. I'm like, man, I went to school here. Right. And people are like, why are you willing to do this? Like, I went to school here. I have pride in this place.
Yeah.
Our kids deserve better.
Yeah.
They just don't know better right now.
Right.
And we have got to do something to get them out of this funk.
Yeah. Was there any using the phones to coordinate meeting in the bathroom, vaping, fights, like things like that?
We saw a huge decrease. Actually, as soon as we instituted that, we saw a huge decrease with like online sales of all that kind of garbage.
Wow. Okay.
A huge, because then you didn't see people getting in trouble. I mean, we knew, all of our CAs knew. And it's funny because parents are like, your school has a vaping problem. I'm like, I'm sorry, but every school in the nation and around the world has a vaping problem.
Yeah, and where do you think
it's not just our high school.
Where do you think these young kids are getting these vapes? Social media.
Yes. Social media. I mean, you can buy them on Amazon. And how are you 18? Click yes.
Oh,
I mean, and you're 12, right? I mean, it's one of those things. So we did see a decrease in those issues.
Okay, so describe to me the policy that you implemented, because there's various levels of how you can pull this off. So describe to me what policy you decided on.
So we started off really strict. We figured if we needed to lessen it, we could. But it's easier to, I think it's better to start really hard and, throwing the hammer down and being very strict in it. It would be to come out really lenient, because then trying to get out of that leniency is tough. So we started, it was bell to bell.
And the yonder pouches, right?
Yes. And we went with the yonder pouch. We looked at a few other things. Parents, when we had a town hall meeting, parents were all over me about, well, why can't you use like those shoe things and you could just have every kid put theirs in there and then it stains in front of the class. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work. And people, I didn't bring my phone today. Yeah, right. So then you still had that argument, right? Teachers will still have that argument, like, I need you, well, I didn't bring, I know you have your phone. I can see in your pocket. I'm not putting it. So there's that constant argument that would go on.
And then they still have it between classes and at lunch, right? Because if it's
at that point in time, yes.
Right.
Well, before. So we decided we're going to go with the yonder pouch. It gets locked up. All these rumors started flaring about that we're making them put it in the pouch and we're taking their phones. I'm like, no, we're not touching their phone.
Yeah.
They're putting the phone in their pouch. That is their pouch. That stays with them in their bag. Well, what happens if you have a school shooting?
Right.
How are we supposed to get a hold of our kids? Well, police will tell you the worst thing that you can do if the school is under active shooter, the worst thing that you can do as a parent is, one, call your kid, and two, show up on campus. And we had an incident that also kind of led to us going with the yonder pouch. And then wanting to build another fence on our campus. Like, our school right now is the original fence is 3.5 feet tall. And it's the perimeter of the entire area of the school. Like when I say, like, the outside perimeter of the school. We finally had a 6-foot wrought iron fence put in on the inside of that, keeping our parking lots outside our new fence, but inside the old fence. And that way, if you come into our parking lots, you still do not have access to getting into our classrooms. We had a huge scare with the lockdown. You know, a couple of years ago, there's those people that were calling and saying that, oh, there's an active, and then all that going into craziness. We had parents hop in that 3.5-foot fence, running onto our campus, knocking on the windows of classrooms. Like, I mean, it was pure, like, you guys are crazy.
Because they were finding out about it through their kids texting them?
False information.
Right.
All false information, which false information was being given to the cops because of the fact of the stuff that the kids were pushing out.
Yeah, causing chaos.
Causing complete chaos. So we went bell to bell. And like parents were so upset. How dare you put in a rule without consulting us first?
Well, paint the picture. So you announce it and you have a town hall, right? Where you were like, parents, let's talk about this. So what happened during that event?
So I had sat with a parent group who was for it. And the parent group said, we should have a town hall meeting. I'm like, perfect. I go, I've never had one. So I'm going to need your guys' help on what we need to do with the town hall meeting. I said, I can put all the verbiage together. I'll get all the data. I'll talk about it. I just need you to do the operations of the town hall, because none of my VPs at that time, nor I, had ever had or put on a town hall meeting. And so apparently there should be a moderator and a timer and all. So they literally dropped the ball.
Oh, God.
They didn't do anything. They just showed up. They showed up. They're like, well, who's the timer? I'm like, what? I'm like, well, I thought you guys were taking care of that. Oh, all they did was they just sat there.
And so my free for all.
And so my poor VPs, one of them's like, hey, I'm like, okay, you're going to have a minute to come up. We'll form a line. You'll have a minute and that's it. Right. And then you can ask your question. We'll do whatever we can to ask questions. And we did that after I gave the presentation. Oh my God, it was like same people kept coming up and coming up and coming up and more and more. And that parent group who was pretty influential in our community at that time. And, you know, we got done, and I'm not going to lie to you. I know at the conference, I used the word being crucified up on our stage. And I was I was being hammered left and right. My poor wife, some of my closest friends were sitting there to support. And my wife's like, look at me. I could see the look on her face. And she's like, dude, how much more of this abuse can you take?
What were they coming to you with? What were they worried about?
One was that safety piece that I just mentioned, like, if there's an active shooter. Or the other one was, how am I supposed to get a hold of my kid if there's been a change in plans in who's picking them up? And it literally was that. And then some people brought up, oh, you're trying to cover what your teachers might be doing in the classroom, or you're trying to cover the racism and other issues on your campus. And I'm like, no. I said, that didn't even spark my mind. I said, all I'm trying to do is get this distraction out of their hands so that my teachers can teach and your kids can learn.
Right. And they're reacting to some viral video, random off, like that really never ever happens, of some teacher being inappropriate and someone happened to capture it. But social media prioritizes that and makes it look like that's a common experience.
Right. And we you know, in the previous, well, I should say, my first semester here came in the middle of the year. So I started in January of 22. And in May of 22, we had an incident on campus. A bunch of knuckleheads decided they were not supervised in our weight room and with the football coach at that time. And these kids were being stupid, and they ended up acting like a bunch of ninjas. But it was kind of like that time where it was kind of warm outside. So these white gaiters, and what they were doing at practice is drenching them with water and then putting them on their heads so that it would cool them off. And so they had them on, and they put them on looking like a ninja and all this and that. And then some kid from behind came and lifted it up. So it looked really bad. It looked like a KKK hood. I hate to say it. And so someone took a picture of it, and the kid who took the picture of it didn't like that kid. All of a sudden threw that on, and literally what the picture looked like and what was really going on weren't the same thing. However, we did put that student up for expulsion.
Wow.
Right? Because of what it looked like. And of course, they got attorneys involved, and the expulsion was blocked. And the student got to come. I mean, the student served some, suspension, obviously, but came back on the campus. So, I mean, that was like another thing, like people taking pictures of stupid things and mislabeling, right, out of context.
Yeah.
And it's not fair.
None of that could have happened. None of that would have happened if not for the picture. I've heard of some teachers, too, who are even nervous to go to the bathroom in the same bathroom as students because they don't want someone to take a picture of them under the stall or...
Well, we don't allow that
No,
anymore,
but like
still,
teachers are nervous about this, too.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, so that's what parents are saying. Well, how do we know? Like, we need those phones because if teacher's doing something wrong, the kids can capture it. Like, told the parent, like, well, that's like me saying that. Well, then I'm going to take out my phone, and every time your kid is causing a ruckus on my campus, how about I video them?
Right.
And give you that and send that out about you and your family. I'm like, that's not okay.
No.
So, and so again, why they were alluding to, we're trying to cover things up. I'm like, I'm not trying to cover anything up. At the end of the day, take a look at our test scores, take a look at your students' grades, and tell me if you like what you see.
Okay.
Right.
So that meeting happened. You got crucified.
Oh, it was bad.
And then you held strong and you moved forward. Strong.
Yep.
Okay.
We even had a board. Well, she wasn't a board member yet. She was actually campaigning to be the board member.
Okay.
And she showed up at the meeting. And, at the very beginning, we all felt like she was on board with what we were doing. And she kind of switched gears on us a bit.
Oh,
wow. And I'm not talking bad about her. It was just shocking.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's not only, I mean, there was a lot of people who came in like for it. And then all of a sudden we're backing off like, well, maybe we should. I'm like
mob mentality.
Yeah. I'm like, no, man. I'm like, I see what's going on in my classrooms every day. And something needs to be done. And so we made some adjustments. We listened to what some parents said.
Okay.
We brought some more parents in and spoke with them one-on-one.
Okay.
Made some adjustments to what we thought were going to be okay. And we just said it like, hey, if there's an issue with safety and we have a lockdown and kids can cut open their yonder pouches and get to their phone, or we'll get kids to safety and we'll open their pouches so they can call the parents. Not a problem. Or if they need something from their student, I'm like, listen, we're a one-to-one school. We all have laptops.
Right. Are they not contacting you on the laptop?
Email your kid.
Right.
If a plan changes, right? Email your kid because we allow students to check their emails during class, or, all of our teachers have their routines, and some of them are like, you come in and you check your grade portal and your emails on, to make sure that you've gotten everything.
Yeah.
For the day. So,
okay.
But we stuck with it and we went bell to bell.
Yeah.
And so then kids were wanting to meet with me as we were going through this.
Yeah.
The first year. And they're like, well, what if we could use our phones at lunch? I'm like, why do you need them at lunch? I go, give me, and I'm willing to listen, right? Like, well, we do a lot of cool activities at lunch and we never get to like record those. Those are like memories and we can take pictures and this and that. And I'm like, you know what? I'll think about it. I really will think about it. So I made sure that next year that our photography class and our leadership class, we were out there with our digital cameras taking more pictures, right? Yep. And trying to help with that. And and then that another year went by, and they said, listen, you're like, really this and that. And the parents like, we're trying to call the office, but the office sometimes can't get all the communication to the classrooms in time or whatever. And so I'm like, you know what? The kids have been really good. They've shown to follow the directions, although on the very first few days of when we rolled out, you saw kids like banging those pouches against cinder block walls trying to break them. But that just goes to show you the addiction.
Yes, I was going to say the addictiveness.
That's pure addiction.
Yeah.
And that's the scariest part. Like, if you're willing to tell off an adult, or you're willing to do anything you can to break that phone, and even till this day, or to break that pouch, and even till this day, putting in burner phones and glue bottles and cases of phones in there to make it look like your phone is in there.
Right.
That just goes to show you the pure addiction.
Yeah, right.
That there is, that Dr. Hyde even talks about. Yeah. And it was, so this current year, we decided to let them have their phones at lunch. And we told their parents, do not text them or call them during the day. Because if your kid answers and we find out, then we're going to take away their phone. You have 40 minutes during the lunch hour to call your student, text your student, do whatever you want. Allow the students to have their phones at lunch, right? Do I really like it or not? I don't know.
Okay.
Do I really see them taking pictures and capturing moments? No.
Okay.
Do I still see a lot of students talking to one another? 100%.
Okay, good.
I see a lot of kids, they might be playing some games on their phone, but a lot of the times I see them with their phones in their hands and it's on their lap, but they're talking to people. So the human interaction is happening. I think it's kind of like they have to have it in their hand. It's like a security blanket for some odd reason.
Yeah.
I've also noticed a lot of kids don't wear a watch, so they look at their phone for time.
Are the smartwatches included in the policy?
So yes and no.
Okay.
So we have a handful of students who are diabetic that use their watch for measuring, which is fine. Here's the thing, we've allowed the smartwatches, and I'll tell you why. And we're not really big on it is because it's obvious if they're texting because they're going like this.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like that accreditation committee's here right now, right? And I said, "Can you tell me?" I go, "Look, I'm honest with everybody. I will tell you. You'll come in," and I said, "We're not perfect. Our phone policy with the yonder pouches is not perfect. We have our flaws. Kids from the time of the day, like from long time ago, they will always find a way to get around something.
Right.
Right? That's just what teenagers do. So I've had schools and districts come and visit our school and how we do things. And I said, listen, if anyone tells you it's easy, they're full of it.
Yeah.
If anyone tells you it's perfect, they're full of it. I said, you are going to see it all. And a lot of them want to come during 5th and 6th period, knowing that we're a high school, because our 6th period, a lot of our seniors might have an open 6th period.
Okay. Yeah.
So after 5th period, they're leaving. So when they're leaving and you're like, hey, why is your phone out? I'm like, Mr. Torigan, I'm a senior. Oh, okay. So you can get away with things a lot easier.
Yeah.
So they've come in, I said, and I'll take them everywhere. And I said, do you see any phones out? People are like, no, we didn't. I'm like, you didn't? They're like, no. And I go, well, I saw a couple. They're like, well, we're figuring they may be seniors. But they're like, when we walked into classrooms, unless a classroom was using it for instructional purposes, like my chemistry class, a certain part of their labs, they record and what their findings are, and then they submit it, right?
Okay.
Those teachers have been really good in making sure that those students are putting them away again.
Right.
But they're like, we didn't see any. And they're like, they walked half of our campus and didn't see a phone out.
Okay.
I asked the WASP committee that's here doing their accreditation.
Yeah.
They said same thing. They said there was one class where there was one kid, a couple of classes where had one kid on their phone, and they walked up and looked at the kid, and the kid's like, yeah, I get my pouch out.
Okay.
And the teacher walked up to the kid like, really? And he's like, I'm so sorry. Like that, and put away his pouch. And so I think what we've done, our number one goal was to get rid of those distractions during instructional time. That is the number one deal. Like when teachers are up teaching, those phones are not out. And we want kids learning. I will tell you, our test scores have gone up.
Great. Yep.
Grades have gone up. Discipline has gone down. And the teachers will tell you, you guys have taken the fight out of putting those phones away. So even when they catch a kid on their phone, they're like, give them that look, and they're like, take out their pouch and they put it away. They will. Now, some teachers like, nope, I've already given you a warning once before, or a week ago, 2 ago. You're going to the re-engagement center. They're going to take away your phone. It'll be parent pickup at the end of the day.
Okay.
The fight of that is gone. It's the kids just at this point know, and they're like, damn, I got caught.
Yeah. So it's hard, but it's worth it. And
100%.
Teachers are grateful.
Yep.
And what you said in the talk in Anaheim was trust the process. Like, trust the process.
Yes. You've got to trust. You've definitely got to trust the verbiage that I was using at the conference was like, hold the vision.
Yeah.
Right. You've got this vision of what you're looking for your school, right? You got to hold the vision, drop the excuses, remember your why, right? And trust the process.
Because you have the data and you have the reasoning behind it. And all of these other excuses are just inconveniences that parents need to get on board with, and teachers too, and know that they have the support of the school, and hopefully district-wide policies can be implemented. But for school administrators or district administrators who want to implement this bell-to-bell phone policy, What other advice would you have based off of what you've learned?
Been working with Yonder now for 3 years. And this isn't a plug for them. I'm just telling you. I'm like, they have been really great to work with. They support you 110% throughout the entire process. They send a team out to help distribute. They do some amazing things, and they've always worked with us if we've needed more pouches or whatever. It is expensive. But when you ask some administrators, like, what would you do to get these test results or these grades, and they're like, how much money would you? They're like, couple $1 million. I'm like, well, I did it with 30 grand.
Right. And it's their mental health as well, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's just the academic piece,
totally.
right? But then their mental health, right? That's another
Can't
piece.
put a price on that.
The hardest part, where I feel like we battle a lot, is, and it's kind of been that way with school at all times, right? With study habits and everything. But this is like, so we limit the phone usage here, but that doesn't necessarily continue at home.
Right.
So it's like you're moving 2 steps forward and more than 2 steps back once they go home. And then the thing that really stinks, like, we just went on this is week 2 that we've been back, but when we went on spring break for a week, it's so easy for them to break that habit and go back home and be on their phones all day.
Yeah.
And then they come back, and so we know that every time we come back from a long, like a winter break or a summer break or a Thanksgiving break or a spring break, we're hammering the phone policy the first couple of days, because kids will very quickly go like, oh yeah, no, we're going back to where we were. But Yonder has told us that we have by far been the most difficult.
Your school?
What we went through, no other schools have really gone through.
Interesting.
Which is crazy to me, because I mean, you saw what my students wrote some really choice words on some poster boards and some Post-its, and those kids were suspended, telling me to F off, and it's their phone, and I was like, wow. But it was brutal. And the worst one was getting the threat on social media that they had my parents' address and they were about to reveal it and tell them to go and vandalize my parents' house.
The aggression that kind of is fueled by their use of social media platforms. Did you watch the series Adolescence on Netflix?
I've started.
Okay.
I literally just started.
Okay. That first scene is...
someone else had told me that too, and I'm like, I need to watch that. We've been getting ready for the accreditation committee for the last month and a half, so I've been really digging my nose into that, making sure that's ready, but that is definitely a to-do.
Okay, yeah, it's just an example how a seemingly good kid can kind of do some dumb things, especially with the anonymity online. Kids feel like they can say whatever they want and they won't get in trouble for it. So on Snapchat, it disappears. And so they'll act in a way that is not in their character and say insane things and threaten people, really. And I'm sorry that you and your parents had to go through that for just trying to protect them.
Right. And you know what? I was just like, but I wasn't backing down.
No.
And the kids didn't do it. I'm like, I'm going to call their bluff.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Sure.
And I told my parents, I'm like, just hang on. And my parents are old school. Yeah, they weren't, they've been here forever at this point, but they were born in different countries and came here. And they're like, no, what you're doing is right. And we're going to stick by it. And people do something to our house, it's fine. I had let the cops know. Because, we have a school resource officer who's part of Fresno PD on our campus. So we let, it went up the chain. Keep an eye on this house. So what's going on.
Yeah.
And so they did. They were nice. They went, they drove the block a few times to make sure nothing was going on. And nothing did happen, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But, it was
crazy.
It was rough, but I had a lot. It's like the silent majority. There was a huge silent majority out there that when they would see me, like, dude, don't stop.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, we get it.
You've got this. And that's what really honestly kept me going. But I will tell you this. If you're going to do this, you better have a strong admin team and teachers who are willing to put up the fight. My admin team, my hat goes off to, I'll get emotional because they walked through that fire with me. And they're like, and you know what, sometimes whether we agree with anything or not, we're with you.
Great. Yeah.
And they knew, and at times we all wanted to say, forget it.
Yeah.
And it's not worth it. But then we're like, so are we saying that because of us, or are we saying that because of them?
Yeah.
If we quit, we're making things easier for us, but we're going to make it worse for kids. So we stuck with it.
I'm so grateful that the example that you're setting, because these addictive smartphones and social media have infiltrated the kids' education, and it shows in the test scores globally, truly. And so we're redirecting, and moving in the right direction. I do wonder, you're in high school setting, so this is more applicable to maybe the younger grades, but a lot of the same addictive apps and sites are also available on the one-to-one school-issued devices that the kids are being given in kindergarten. Do you feel like some of those same addictive issues are arising around the school-issued tech as well?
So we have a pretty good firewall that does not allow that to come up.
Okay.
We learned to strengthen that firewall as we were going through COVID.
Yeah.
Because we were not a one-to-one prior to COVID. I remember at our junior high, we probably spent over $60,000 in our site funds to purchase like a classroom set of computers that go into a charging cart.
Yeah, right.
Because of testing, and they were bringing out the technology, and there was only classroom sets. So when kids would come to that class, they'd use it, put it back in the charging cart, and they'd get charged for the next class, and so on and so forth.
But why not go back to that after COVID?
Right. Well, what happened was so all those computers, when we went into COVID, I mean, like literally we had just gotten some of these carts like brand new.
Oh, crap.
And we had to give them out.
Yeah.
We had to give all those computers out because they were counting out how many computers each side had and who needed what and so on. And the district was buying more computers, and we got to it. They will tell you that they won't go back to that because they feel that like we're a Title I district, and it means of like the majority of our district is poverty.
So it's their only way to access the internet for things, even like maybe the parents need to pay a bill or.
Well, it's just equity to learning,
equity
to education.
Okay, sure.
Right. Well, I mean, like what's the beauty of our school, honestly, at Bullard? We have the richest of the rich, the poorest of the poor,
yeah,
and everything in between. We are a very good example of what society really is, for everything from race, nationality, religious beliefs, you name it.
Amazing.
We have it.
Yeah.
And it's huge. We have a lot of students who like, no, I don't want the school's laptop. I have my own Mac. Right? Where a lot of kids are like, no, I'm banking on that because teachers are doing certain assignments on technology. Although, as we still are, teachers have dialed back from that as well.
Okay.
So yeah, and then and I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm on the technology team for our district too. So when it comes to those computers, like one thing that we were really pushing on, so we use Teams as a platform when they were like, instead of like Google Chat, or we were using Teams, and students could chat with other students.
Right.
And then we had this thing called Gaggle, which would, go through everything. And as soon as something was said that's out of the order, like, and they're playing games like, I'm going to kill you right now. And then that gets flagged and you're getting this alert that there might be some type of violence going on.
Yeah.
So I was part of the team that we got rid of the student-to-student chats. We got rid of the student-to-teacher chats. Now teachers can reach out to their own students, and students can reach out to their own teachers, but that they can reach out, but that it doesn't call them, it sends them like the text. And if the teacher the teacher can respond through a text.
Okay.
And if they want to meet, then the teacher has to initiate the video.
Okay.
So it's really calmed it down because students from my school could reach out to students from a different school.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, it was bad.
Wow.
It was getting really, and we were going through Gaggles, and part of it's like they're playing a game late at night.
Right.
We were encouraging the technology. We were encouraging the screen time. Where if you read Dr. Haidt's book, like he's like, we need to discourage that, and it needs to be supervised. It's
yeah. And you heard him talk about adding a fifth norm, reducing ed tech, particularly in the elementary and middle school grades. Do you agree with that?
I do. The only thing I question is like with a lot of like SATs, state testing, our AP testing, all that is now on the computer.
And if they were to only do the testing on the computer and do everything else hand to paper, it's like they don't know how to use the programs, right?
So that's a lot of our practice tests and everything that we're doing to prepare the kids.
Right.
We do it on the computer because like I remember the first year they went to AP exams on computer, on digital. Not only were you worried about just knowing the material for like AP US history, you're now worried about like, how does this program work?
Yeah.
Is it going to time out? Like, so there was extra stresses on. So what we're trying to do is get away that test anxiety so they know how the test works, right? And all they really have to worry about is the material.
Right.
And so we do, like, I'm not going to lie. Like I was here on Saturday getting ready for the accreditation committee come Sunday night. And like 5 or 6 of my AP, we had over 200 kids on campus on a Saturday taking AP practice exams and getting ready.
Yeah. And I don't think it's about getting rid of all tech in the school. I just think it's using it more intentionally, and not every lesson needs it. And particularly in those younger grades. I mean, I'm had to move my kids out of the school because they were overusing. Now they're in a classical charter school where they don't use any tech until maybe 4th, 5th grade. And even then it's just like typing, and they do make exceptions for some of the testing. And that's a question. Isn't it more stressful for them then because they're not familiar with the program? But why is that a requirement? Why can't we go back, for the younger grades? I don't know.
I think it has to do with scoring it. It's a lot quicker to score. Yeah. I don't know.
But is it best for these kids to be on those screens? Are they retaining the material better? Like, studies say no. Studies say they retain better from paper and textbooks. So anyway, I do wonder, while I have you, President Trump just issued an executive order to ramp up AI in the classrooms starting in kindergarten, student-facing AI programs. Doesn't sound like you had heard of that. So like, how do you feel about that, just hearing that now?
That's concerning. Because I've been going through some trainings with AI. How do we use AI in sense of teaching students, like high school students, how to use it and not abuse it?
Right.
Students are using it to cheat.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do we teach them, like, okay, yeah, you're going to use this, but the way I've used it is I'll start writing my speech and I just can't find a way to start it. So I'll throw all my ideas down. My introductory paragraphs are always horrible at the very beginning till I'm done writing everything. And I'm like, help me with an introductory paragraph, and boom, it pops up. But it sparks, right? It sparks, and then all of a sudden I end up changing half the speech. Yeah. But it helps for me, I use it to help spark
creativity, and
and it gets me going. I know a couple of my classrooms, my teachers have taught the kids how to use AI to correct, like to correct what they've written. Or in other words, like, okay, here's my speech, I'm sticking it in. Give me a different version of it so I can see what a different version looks like. Or correct my grammar.
Yeah.
Analyze the data. Like, we've been pushing, like, my chemistry teachers and a lot of my science teachers have been trying to teach students on, okay, let's put all this data that we received and ask it to analyze the data. How does it work? I mean, the kids are dumbfounded, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And at the same time, now you've opened the door, like, I think I can cheat with this.
Right. I know.
But a lot of the testing that they do in class when it comes to paragraph writing is done on paper.
Okay, good. Okay, there you go. Yeah.
So, except for obviously when you're taking the AP exam or the state exam that you have this writing portion, the performance task that you got to do, that's all. But here's what I'll tell you has been different. I noticed this when we did it was right before break. We had our SBAC ELA. SBAC is a state test that we're taking in California.
Okay.
And we're taking the English portion of it, right? And what we did, we noticed that kids were coming out for the performance test. They had their own scratch paper. And we're like, oh, okay. So a lot of the teachers were teaching them as soon as they got the prompt to look at, and then what they would do is they would start writing down and putting things on paper first. And they were able to have when I say they took notes, they had like these papers that they wrote themselves in the sense of like, your introductory paragraph should have this.
Yeah.
And so what they were doing was like, they're seeing what they're reading and they're starting to write their things, right?
Yeah.
And then so when they got done, I saw a ton of papers being turned in, and most of the stuff was written down. And then I saw kids, like, they were just sitting there typing their
it
paper.
over. Yeah.
right? Which was amazing to me because I saw them writing first.
Yeah.
Or at least brainstorming.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, wow, like, when they all left and they all turned their paper, I'm like, and they're done with their test. I'm like, wow, look all the brainstorming that was done here.
Right.
And they were like, it was crazy. So I think our teachers are doing some good things.
That's great to hear. Because there's some high school teachers I've talked to that cannot read these kids' writing because they never write. Everything since kinder has been on the computers.
So that's what one of our teachers did is like, hey, so you're going to write this paper, but because some of you have such a bad handwriting, you're going to write it. And what you're going to do is I'm going to see your first draft and you're going to give me a copy of it. I'm going to make photocopies. Then I'm going to give you back your original, and then you're going to take it home and type it.
Right.
And then you're going to bring it back.
Right.
And it should match. Now, is it some extra work? Yes. But you know what? Some of the teachers said it only took 2 times. And she's like, once I found out.
Yeah. They didn't want to do it twice. They're like, I got to write it more clearly.
Yeah. So, but again, I will say that we do have some teachers who are struggling with it.
Yeah.
Okay. But some of my teachers are doing some good things with it.
Okay. Good to know. We'll see how that all rolls out. Is there anything that we didn't cover related to the phone policy that you wanted to share today?
Well, like I said, we kind of revamped it. It's pretty much, when I say it's bell to bell with the exception of lunch. If we do have like an all school rally, we allow them to have them out.
The lunch allowance of the phones, what would make you decide to go back to the pouches for lunchtime?
Just recording of nonsense.
Okay.
Like, every high school will have their issues. There'll be a fight and they're recording it.
Okay.
And honestly, what we've done this year is we started suspending those students who were recording a fight.
Yeah.
Did you get permission? I didn't think so.
Right.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So we've done that. If that continued, and if I see that the test scores are dropping, because I will tell you, like, are they really locking them up?
Most, though. Most, would you say?
I would say probably about 65%.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
And maybe that's being generous. I don't know. But like I said, is when you go to classrooms, they're not out.
Okay.
They're not. And that was the number one thing that we've wanted.
Yeah.
Kids will joke like we have House of Representatives, and I'll go in and they'll ask questions like, when are we getting rid of the yonder policy? And
we're only getting started.
Yeah. I said, the state's only getting started. And they found out about AB 3216. Some of my students like, Torigan, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah. Phone Free Schools
I said,
Act.
I'm not. I said, we are.
Yeah.
I said, we are ahead of the game.
Yeah.
I said, we're ahead of the game. But I said, everybody thought that I was crazy. And here we are. And I said, but again, it's not going to work if you do not have the right people. I have the right people. My team is amazing. Like my team, my staff, my teachers, our kids have really done a great job. It only works because I have the right people working with me.
And I think that it will only get easier and easier for schools because the amount of parents that are delaying smartphones entirely, choosing kid-safe phones, delaying social media and all the addictiveness that is on the phones. Like, we are rising up and making safer choices for our kids and setting more boundaries. And so over time, hopefully we will be in unison with our decisions both at school and at home. Also, you said, so the kids go home and they have consistent rules about, no phones in your bedroom. Like, the parents are also giving them time away from the addictive platforms so that they can lead healthier lives and know that that feels better to be away from it rather than on it. So I hope that is what I'm seeing in my parent community. And on your side, schools all over the country are going bell to bell phone free, whether they're being forced to through the law in their state or just really passionate about it and understand the benefit like you did really, truly early. So I hope we're all moving in the right direction together and putting kids first.
The only thing that I start asking questions about now with AB 3216 is with limiting or prohibiting a smartphone on a high school campus or on a school campus.
Yeah.
This law about you can't suspend for willful defiance. How are schools going to afford it?
So you're saying the law is not strong enough?
Well, I think AB 3216 is strong enough. I think the new law, the law that was just passed and brought on this year, is that we cannot suspend students for willful defiance. So if I go up to a student and say, you're going to put your phone in the pouch, and the student's like, I'm not putting it in the pouch, and is not going to listen to you.
Yeah.
He won't curse at you. He'll stay polite, but he's not going to follow your direction.
Right.
I can't suspend him.
And you need to be able to
You need to have some teeth.
assign consequences to it. Otherwise, it doesn't.
I'm not saying suspension's always the right call.
No.
I'm just saying, but like, if you're going to take away my teeth, right? Yeah. If I'm going to say, let's use a DUI for an example. Okay, well, you get a DUI, but I can't, I can't arrest you for a DUI. Then
it means nothing.
What is that going to solve?
Right.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're going to put in a smartphone policy that limits or prohibits smartphones on school sites, you've got to be able to give the schools some type of teeth that if you bring your phone on campus or you misuse technology on campus, there's a stiff consequence to pay.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying an arrest or anything like that, but I'm just saying there's got to be something that parents have to understand. Parents are like, I don't agree with your cell phone policy. I'm like, okay, but it's a state law. What now?
Yeah.
Like, well, my kid's not going to follow it. And I'll tell my kid not to be rude to you.
Yeah.
But he's not putting his phone in a pouch.
Okay, well, let's write a letter to Governor Newsom telling, let's do it.
Like, I heard that he was supposed to have someone at that conference that was going to be listening, but I never heard of anything that came out of that.
Okay.
But I mean, that would be one of the things, like, they're taking a lot of teeth away from educators when it comes to that.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously, the private schools can do whatever they want. That's great. But I think the hard reality is I don't think a lot of our politicians really know what's going on in our public schools.
And that's why we need people like you writing it down, and I will help you. We'll get parents to sign and school administrators to sign, and we get attention on it. But I think progress has been made, but there's more work to be done. But we need all schools on board, understanding the benefits and doing the hard work and trusting the process and all together, and then parents to understand the reasoning behind it. I think we're going in the right direction with people like you at the helm. So thank you, Armen, for sharing today and for staying strong. We really appreciate it. Parents with younger kids like me just want our kids to be able to go to public school and be safe and not be addicted and not be filmed by other kids. And so you're doing the work for our younger kids too, to create a system that's safe. So thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.